Hi everyone, my name is Indira Schalwecker, International Art Director for Tony Guy and Label M.
Hi, my name is John Wilson, also International Artistic Director for Tony Guy and for Label M. And today we're working on our brand new collection, Duality. Now the concept behind the collection is that it's going to allow us creative freedom and expression by working on similar sectioning patterns that gives us a whole multitude of textures, shapes and silhouettes.
John and I are working on a technique called the angles. Really what the concept is all about is to remove weight in areas and build up volumes in others to really create the contrast of strength and softness. Really what I'm looking for is kind of really carving out areas and make it look like a buzz cut and then have a little bit more disconnection through the top area to create a little bit more that versatility and softness.
So my interpretation of the angles is that we're working on a longer length. Now we're going to work a narrow shape through the sides, elongating the top, but keeping that perimeter weight through the outside, which really gives us a very big 70s inspiration and influence. So let's have a look at the step-by-step for the angles.
To begin with, and before the technique, a section pattern is first taken. Sectioning is key in controlling the technique and is determined by the desired end shape. From a radial parting, a series of 6 triangles pivoting from the crown and worked out towards the hairline. Offsetting and adjusting where these triangles are placed will vary the end shape and is worked or can be worked depending on suitability. So now the sections are placed in, the techniques can be cut. Notice now, between the two techniques, the differences in shape and lengths the hair is going to be cut at, but the similarity in the sections. On Indira's model, the cut is started on the left-hand side, taking a vertical section and elevating the hair at 90 degrees to the head shape. The line is cut to around 1 finger's depth down to the hairline. These shorter areas will give the shape strength and the appearance of the buzz cut. This inspiration for this cut has been very much seen at the moment with models such as Ruth Bell. From here, pivoting sections are worked without any over direction. Continue in that vertical line down to the ear level, and notice at the moment Indira is working on the outside of her fingers, so it's working with a much more comfortable standing position, and also blunt cutting the line. This was seen as quite important in this case. We don't want to create too much texture in this area, but it's really about creating the strength that's required. From here, pivoting sections are taken using our first cut section as a guide, and then again maintaining that 90 degrees elevation, working the hair up to that guideline and continuing the line through. We'll continue to see now pivoting sections taken through this area, working towards the front and to the face shape, pivoting right the way through to the top of this first section. This will be repeated on the opposite side section. On John's cut, starting at the side, a section is taken from the radial at the top. This is elevated high at 90 degrees, deciding on the length of these layers at the crown. This is important as this determines and becomes the guide for all of the other sections throughout the technique. The line is point cut and works slightly shorter towards the perimeter. This will always be varied for suitability. Sections are then pivoted towards the back of the radial and over-directed up to this guideline. This will maintain more weight into the perimeter. By working these layers at this length, we're going to be creating a mid-length end shape. This is then repeated on the opposite side. Using the crown as our guide, we'll be continuing for our triangle sections, connecting at the crown but disconnecting the lengths of these triangles. This is going to create a narrow shape around the temple areas, but allow volume to be created through the top. Checking the balance is key to maintain a consistency throughout the technique. On Indira's, using the last section as a guide and working from the crown towards the front, a guideline is cut following the head shape. From here, sections will be pivoted across the head shape and over-directed to this first section. Because of the offset triangle section that was taken, slight asymmetry will be created as we progressively work across the shape to build up a slightly longer length. This can be varied depending on suitability and depending on how strong or how soft you want the end shape to become. Continue taking pivoting sections across the top, over directing to our first cut section. And then work into our last section, making sure that all of the hair is worked across, over directed and meets our guideline. Now that we've completed one side, we move across to the opposite side and repeat this technique. Again, working from the crown towards the front hairline and over directing the sections across the top to our first cut triangle. Again, making sure we're building up length across the top area. Notice now as the top area is cross-checked, the offset build-up of length to one side. This will create softness in contrast to the much shorter side areas. If we look at John's technique, again working on the top triangle section. Starting on the outside of this section, pivoting sections are taken, and using the crown area from the previous section as a guide, the line is point cut and inverted from the crown to longer towards the perimeter to maintain length and weight towards the face. Sections are then pivoted to the profile parting and over-directed out to the stationary guide. This maintains length throughout the top area to complement the narrowness of the sides. Within this section, the length connects at the crown but then disconnect towards the front. Lengths can be varied for suitability. Working the same on the opposite side, the lengths are worked from the crown, again maintaining and building up length towards the front of this section. This will create a disconnection from our previous cut side section. The line is continually point cut to create softness within the end shape. The top triangle sections are now completed and the back sections can be worked. With endearers, the approach is going to be the same as the shorter side sections that we saw worked earlier. Starting with the profile section, the hair is worked 90 degrees and worked down into the nape, changing the finger position for comfort and to create a shape that follows the head shape. This will create strength that will be contrasted with length later when the last two triangle sections are cut. Again working on the outside of the fingers, but then changing to the inside of the fingers when working the hair down into the nape. This will be a lot more comfortable and create a shape that follows the head shape. Once one side is completed, this is then repeated on the opposite side, continuing to exactly the same length as our original guide, working down into the nape. John is now continuing on the back triangle section. From the previous cut top section, taking a guide from the crown, a profile section is first taken. The hair is elevated at 90 degrees to the head and point cut following the head shape. As the line is worked towards the perimeter, the elevation is raised to maintain weight into the baseline. From the profile, the sections are then pivoted throughout the back without over-directing to remove weight. Consistency in elevation and direction of hair travel is key to create an even distribution of weight. Mid-length hair is as popular as it's ever been, alongside movement in hair, which has been a big fashion story for autumn-winter 16. This is something that is very evident at London Fashion Week and editorials around the world. This is then completed before moving on to our last two triangle sections. Now moving back to our shorter technique, the last two triangle sections are a repeated technique from the top section. Using the outside of the short section as a guide, the sections are over-directed into the centre, creating a build-up of length and weight at the middle of the section. This will create two corners of weight that sit just behind the ears and emphasise the shortness of the buzz cut areas. Hair will always fall from short to long, so pushing out the shape where the length has been built up. Again, controlling the shape, working on the outside and inside of the fingers and working down into the nape is key. Once the hair is directed back to the centre, the sections are then directed to the short side areas, using this as a guide, creating a corner of weight. Again, when cross-checking, the corner can clearly be seen. Once this is completed on the opposite side, the foundation of the technique is now complete and the hair is ready for colour. On the longer shape, John is working on the last two triangles, this time creating an inversion from short at the crown to longer at the perimeter. This will help to create volume at the crown area, maintaining weight at the perimeter where the hair is weaker. This is worked in both triangle sections before checking the balance. By working the 6 triangles connecting at the crown, but then disconnecting as they progress into the shape, the key is to create a seamless feeling. It is important to understand the rules of technique, but creative collections are sometimes about breaking or bending those rules. It is this that is reflected with the technique of the angles. From there, a baseline is then cut, directing the hair down to the natural fall and point cut through to the required length, creating weight into the perimeter. Once the baseline is complete, the front perimeter shape is now cut. A diagonal section from a parting at the curve of the head is taken. The hair is directed out at a high elevation and a line is cut with a slice cutting technique to create softness around the front perimeter. The length of the perimeter can be adapted for suitability to the individual in every case. This is then repeated on the opposite side. More weight can then be removed by slicing freehand and working visually. Both foundation shapes of the cut are complete. The hair is dried, ready for the colouring techniques. Now that the colour applications are finished, before drying, products to create and enhance the texture are applied. Indira applying curl cream throughout for hold and texture. John first applies Label M leave-in conditioner from roots to tips. This will help to maintain a moisture content within the hair as it dries. John then applies Label M thickening cream. This heat activated cream will help to swell the hair shaft, emphasising the shape and texture. Indira's blow dry is kept very simple, just keeping it fairly flat and working with the comb. On John's model, after rough drying, he then blow dries the hair smooth with a brush in preparation for personalising and also for using the Label M Pro curling tong. Once the blow dries are complete, both shapes are now texturised using a point cutting technique. This creates a seamless broken texture that helps to blend the short and long areas and disconnections. Indira working the scissors into the 3 areas where there is a build-up of weight, the 2 areas behind the ear and the length throughout the top, then taking care of details around the hairline at the sides and the nape area. Notice how the scissors on the shorter shape are cutting slightly across the hair, eliminating more exaggerated pieces. This will create more texture. It is this, when the details of the shape are taken care of, that make each shape totally individual. Details such as fringe lengths, how soft or strong you make a focal point, and texturising techniques are all part of the personalising. No 2 shapes or clients are the same, and this is also true of no 2 hairdressers. It is this that makes our creative collection so adaptable and open to individual interpretation. On the longer shape, parallel point cutting is used, elevating the hair high and directing the scissors to around 2 inches into the ends. This is worked consistently throughout, creating an even blend. Notice how the scissors are taken parallel to the direction of hair to ensure not to take out too much of the hair. The front perimeter is then worked with a slicing technique. This will determine the final length and release weight, creating texture. To continue the personalising, the hair is now tonged with the large Label M Pro curling tong, creating a subtle movement. Applying Label M hairspray, the hair is tonged in different directions as not to create a too uniform feeling. Once complete, the Label M texturising volume spray is applied to the roots for volume and the shine mist applied through the mid-lengths and ends. Label M hairspray is used to complete the look. On the shorter shape, Label M soufflé is applied. This soft cream wax gives a subtle separation and definition, bringing out the shape, exaggerating the corners that are built up behind the ears and through the top. It is the finishing techniques and products that can be used that are as important as the cut and colour technique. With the variety within the Label M range, we can always create variation in finish, again making the collection totally adaptable to the individual client. To summarise the technique of the angles, working from a section pattern of 6 triangles from the crown out to the hairline, Indira used a combination of short, close-cut buzzed areas, building up to corners of weight through the back and offsetting the top. John working on a mid-length shape, inverted layers connecting at the crown and allowing disconnections to be created throughout the triangles, producing a shape with a narrow feeling through the curve of the head and volume at the crown. This is the technique of the angles, a technique that is fresh and can be utilised with so many variations, allowing for total suitability. As part of the Duality collection, the concept of total freedom and utilising section patterns as a means of controlling technique allows complete creative expression. As an example of this was the decision to take the fringe area shorter, creating a stronger focal point. First the hair was combed flat and a strong line blunt cut working shorter to longer. From there, exaggerated pieces were cut into the line visually, creating a broken texture. This very simple change has a dramatic effect and is a great example of how details within our cuts allow us to create looks from softer to a much stronger directions.